Oh, before I go on much further, can I just talk about how much of a coward the show adapters are? Not a single yayo. How dare you, sir, deny me my 4 kids' lineage?
Hello and welcome to Add It to the List, the show where we binge watch a season of an anime and then talk about whether it should go on your watch list. I'm Forrest, and with me here, as always...
Hi, I'm Jack.
This week, we're actually not watching an anime. We're watching live-action One Piece. If you are not aware of One Piece... just beware of spoilers, because we're probably just going to be talking about spoilers from here on out. Anyway, Jack, what did you know about One Piece before this? I mean, I know you know a lot about One Piece, but I guess how did you get into One Piece?
So, One Piece was airing at the same time. So, as most people our age is true, One Piece was one of those 4 kid dubs / Toonami dubs that you just watched because it was on and it was cool, and it, you know, like, anime is so distinct from Western animation, right? Like when you're like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like your first exposure to anime, especially back then, like nowadays it's kind of whatever because it's like a much more of a common thing in America and it's a lot more accessible. It's on Netflix, right? Like not even like live action adaptations, like actually just anime adaptations are on Netflix, right? And every household has Netflix. Well, I should say that is inherently not classes, but it is stands from a position of privilege, and I should recognize that. But it's a much more common presence to have in your life growing up as a kid. But damn, dude, I didn't even have cable as a kid. So like coming across cartoons was kind of like an all right, especially cartoons that weren't PBS Kids. And then coming across anime after like the only other cartoon exposure that I had being like Ed, Ed, and Eddie and like Courage the Cowardly Dog. It's like, oh, what's this? What's this? There's punching in the air. Right? Like, it was wild. And One Piece being about pirates that are intrinsically cool if you don't think too hard about the real world implications of. That was sick as shit. Like, my earliest One Piece memory is I had gotten my hands on a VHS tape of a Toonami episode with the ad still in it. And it was the episode that we're introduced to Ace. Oh, yeah. And that was, again, like, we had bunny ears at my house. So that's why I think Ace is as cool as I think he is. Because he was just like, A, look at him, and B, he was like my definition of One Piece. So
that's actually very interesting.
Yeah.
Because I know you like Ace, and I am very indifferent to Ace.
He's so cool. He's Luffy's cooler brother, at the very least.
He just could have been so much better.
I mean, yeah, but in his defense, he is dead. Anyway.
Well, if you're watching this because of the One Piece live action, sorry.
I mean, spoilers for the anime. Forrest, what got you into One Piece?
Well, somehow I like went years without like knowing anything about it. Like I had heard about it because I guess I had heard about it when I started getting into anime, but like I just like literally never even contemplated that I was gonna watch it for some reason. And then like one day in like 2015, I was just like, I should watch One Piece. Like, I had zero context. I like maybe knew who Luffy was. I don't even know how I went so long without.
Did you say 2015?
Yeah.
That's amazing to me.
What? That I just didn't know anything about?
That you've gone most of, like, the lion's share of your life has been One Piece-less. is not something I would assume.
Just based on how much I love it.
It's so intrinsically a part of like my mental picture of you because gestures vaguely at room around us. Again, primarily audio medium. There is 2 shelves of just One Piece figures.
Yeah, probably make that more like 4 shelves.
So, like, I don't think it's too absurd for me to assume that this has been an ongoing passion. Yeah. But damn,
I mean,
good on you.
Pretty much like 8 years already, which is insane to think about. But
you were an adult when you found One Piece.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably honestly why I like it so much. Because I feel like I got into it at a point where I was like starting to have just better, or I mean, just a stronger grasp on the things that I like. And like, I feel like we talk all the shit about One Piece on this podcast, and just like, it's not well, yeah, but I mean, like, I don't always disagree with you. Like, I don't think One Piece is inherently perfect, but I still love every aspect of One Piece. And when I got into it, I was just like, yeah, I'll just watch like 100 episodes, see how that goes. Like,
I'll just casually committed to 100.
Well, dude, this was like not long after I had watched like Dragon Ball Z and like original Dragon Ball, both of which I fucking binged in like weeks. Like Dragon Ball Z, I straight up watched in a 2-week time period.
God damn.
Because that was all I did on my winter break. Was I literally just sat there and I just watched these like 2-hour long videos on YouTube that were just like 4 episodes in a row.
I'm still just getting over that 100 episodes was a sampler size for you. Yeah, I give things 2 scenes, and if I'm not in, I'm out.
Well, I mean, I guess ultimately, like, it could have been less than that had I not enjoyed it. But I was like, I'm going to just watch this until I either decide I like it or not. And basically, I got to Nami in the Arlong Park arc. Like, that was the thing that, like, sold me.
It's a good arc.
Like
an arc that's covered in the live action. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. I mean, basically, that's the gist of it. And now it's like one of my favorite things in the world. Just because I love the characters. I love the world it takes place in. I think Oda is a pretty fantastic writer. With his flaws. I don't think there's such thing as a perfect writer. But, like, I think... For me, the pros of One Piece outweigh the cons like tenfold. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess we're just going to talk about the live action One Piece because, hot damn, it's actually not terrible.
Yeah. Have you watched the other Netflix adaptations of anime?
I've watched the Death Note movie. And I watched like the first 2 episodes of the Cowboy Bebop, and I was like, no, I'm just not watching that.
That's fair.
And the Death Note movie, I feel like I blocked out of my memory because I straight up like don't remember anything except for one scene where Light is sitting in a fucking restaurant across the table from L. That's like all I remember from that movie.
Similarly, I had watched the Death Note anime, or the Death Note movie, but I got to the point where they introduced the female character, and I don't remember her name because I don't like Death Note that much.
Misa, I think.
Either way,
I
got to the point where we got...
I don't even think is me.
I think it is Misa, but picturing her as Jar Jar really undercuts a lot of her scenes. Misa gonna write you down in my book. Anyway, I got to the point where like they just completely demolished her character. Just not recognizable as a character, with the exception of being blonde.
Well, I remember someone who played her in the live action, because
I don't know. But then I stopped watching it there, and then I heard about the Cowboy Bebop live action, and I'm like, I've been burned before, so I'm just going to let everybody else watch this, and I trust 3 of their opinions, and then I waited for those 3 people to watch it, and I'm like, okie dokie. They say it's bad.
Sorry, I'm just like, I remember the girl who plays her in the live action as someone that I really recognized. Oh, wait, what else was she in?
Don't recognize her as much as you think, do you? She's looking like a Kristen Stewart in that picture.
Oh yeah, she's like she's one of the characters in Death Stranding. That's why I recognized her.
Anyway, so I didn't even give Cowboy Bebop a chance, and from what everybody says and what few clips I've seen after the fact, I'm so glad I didn't.
See, like, I was so scared that the One Piece live action was going to turn out like the Cowboy Bebop live action, because, like, basically the thing that I think most people love about Cowboy Bebop is its episodic nature. And I mean, this is something that I really like about it, is that, like, it does have an overarching plot, but that plot is not always the point. Like, I feel like the point of Cowboy Bebop is getting to know these characters and getting to see them live their lives. And then, like, occasionally we'll get, you know, snippets of this overarching plot. But then, like, the Cowboy Bebop live action was just, like, right off the bat, it was like, here's Vicious, and he's, like, the big bad guy, and we're gonna, like, have him in a bunch of scenes, and he's, like, developing a character. But it's like, that's not the fucking point of the anime, dude. Like, the anime is about these other characters, and Vicious doesn't matter. Like, Vicious only matters when Spike stuff happens. And it was just, like... And he was also portrayed so poorly. Like, he just was an emo little bitch.
I mean, you look at him, and
I mean, that's what he is. But
if you mute the TV and you have me watch all 3 Vicious scenes, and then tell me to, like, write him in live action, come on.
Well, exactly. That's not, I guess, necessarily what I meant. More so that, like, in the anime, he doesn't need a character, because what we know about him is all we need to know about him. But in, like, he just doesn't work as, like, a character that you're trying to flesh out. I also think the characterization is just not good.
Fair enough.
But anyway, this is not about live action Cowboy Bebop.
I will say, Cowboy Bebop hot take, I don't think there is an overarching story. I think that there is an outro to the show.
Well, okay.
And the outro has a story, but I think, like, the first 18 episodes taken in isolation.
Yeah.
It's just a separate show.
I guess that's the
and it's
thing,
good.
Is, like, I don't, like, they were trying to give Cowboy Bebop, like, an overarching plot line, because I guess that's what people in the US like, which I feel like is just not the case.
You know what I just realized? Well, okay, so I'm going to say 2 things, one of which is not a new realization, and you know is not a new realization. I like clowns. But my favorite character...
In the live action?
Oh, no. The moment I watched the live action and Buggy showed up, my thought process was a little bit too jokery, but you're not going to get a clown in the year 2023 that's not, like, at least a little bit influenced by Joker.
Yeah.
But no, the moment Buggy showed up, I'm like, yes, get it. No, my favorite character in One Piece is a clown. And my favorite character in Cowboy Beep Boop is a mime clown guy. The Umbrella Man.
Oh, really? God,
yeah.
That guy's terrifying. I mean, he's a very interesting character, but God, he's terrifying.
I love clowns that just really make you uncomfortable.
And I know that they did him in the live action. I'm glad that I just never saw that. Anyway,
yeah, I can't imagine that went well.
Like,
anyway.
My point was mostly just that, like, I was scared that the One Piece live action was going to turn out that way, where they were going to try... But I feel like One Piece already has a fairly overarching like series of events. Like while each arc is kind of separate, like there is an ultimate goal. So I feel like it kind of just caters itself more to that style of viewing. And they definitely did kind of do that, especially with the Garp stuff that we'll like talk about.
Oh.
But anyway, if you're listening to this and you know nothing about One Piece,
If you're listening to this and you made it this far, congratulations.
yeah, I guess so. But you should go watch the live action One Piece because we're going to talk about spoilers.
It's also worth noting that it's 8 episodes, right? Like it's 8-hour give or take episodes. Yeah. So it's hard to take anything that happens without the context of everything else that happens. So it is just sort of a hard show to avoid spoilers for.
Yeah.
With that being said, I think it's fair to say that we are going to try to limit the time that we spend comparing it to the anime. Granted, we're not going to avoid doing it, right? Like, yeah. But we're not going to go scene by scene going, where in the anime you happen. There are some pretty big diversions actually that happen, and none of them are okay. One of them I think is just objectively worse, but most of them work themselves out in the wash anyway. If you wanted to watch the anime, then you could just watch the Netflix adaptation, and then like you're going to be missing some specific details that I don't think matter too terribly much, and you've got like 75% of the idea of the entirety of the East Blue, which is like the first grand arc of One Piece.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great introduction. Like if you have always been on the fence about One Piece and like you just don't want to approach it because it's got so many episodes or whatever, you know, it's like just like you could watch this, and if you want more, there's so much more.
Yeah.
Where that came from.
Just Google what episode the last scene happens in the anime and just start watching from that episode after you watch the Netflix adaptation.
I mean...
And in fact, you'll actually know more about the world than people who had just watched the anime up to that point. Because they drop some big bombs about just world building, just like casually, that we won't be introduced to for like another 80 episodes or something.
I would say I kind of disagree with that, because I think you should watch the first like 5 or 6 episodes if you're going to watch the anime, because honestly, the very beginning of One Piece is like one of my favorite things of all in One Piece. And there were some significant like frames and moments from that first part that they just kind of subtracted from the live action, either for, you know, like budgetary reasons, or just like not really being able to pull off this like artistic shot, you know. And like, yeah, we'll talk about that. But I just don't agree that you could just like start from where this leaves off, because I think there's so much great stuff in the very beginning. If
you are somebody who just cares about the events of what happens, and honestly, even character motivations, like you get to feel like you know everybody's character motivations, and it's pretty one for one. The show keeps everybody more or less who they are. There are some moments and there are some scenes and like some events that like the situation around them and the framing for the event change in the live action adaptation, but everybody acts more or less how they acted.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like,
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I think the casting was pretty spot on in this.
Okay. I don't like to objectify real human beings, but damn, Zoro is so hot. Holy shit. When he was up on that post, Zoro is so hot, dude.
I almost think he's a little too hot, because honestly, his acting could use a little bit of work. I think
that's fair to say for a lot of the cast, though.
I guess, but I think that he had unfortunately.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think he had probably the weakest performance.
I don't know if it was because he's had a bad performance or if it's because of the character he's playing.
I mean, that's
right,
fair.
because like Zoro in the manga is such a detached person who's there to deliver like stoic one-liners or like badass one-liners. They gave him so much more dialogue, but still kept him feeling like that relative detached, too cool to care. Which, when it's 8 hours of a decent amount of your character talking, there's only so long that too cool to care is endearing.
Yeah, I think
for what his character is, he did it well.
Yeah, I enjoyed his performance. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, there's just certain moments that I definitely, because I think he's good at delivering the like one-liners, and like honestly, like it made me laugh both times I watched it. But like when he like walks out of the back of their little ship, like in like the second episode, I want to say, like,
toilet's broken.
Yeah, he's like, the toilet's broken, and she's like, what? There's not even a toilet on the ship. And he's like, oh, well, something's leaking back there. I don't know. That was just so funny. And that's like peak Zorro. Like, that's what I love about Zorro, is that he's really strong and he's stoic, but he also has really funny moments, which I think that the actor did a pretty solid job with. But some of the more emotional moments, I felt like he kind of just lacked.
I think that's kind of true for everybody when they were doing their more emotional moments. And I don't think it's their fault. I think part of it is, I was on a date once, and it was one of those dates that like you can tell an hour into it that like, oh, you're fine, but there's nothing here. You know, it's like, oh, you're a good person. This is going to be an enjoyable afternoon, but there's like nothing's flying, right? Like, it's the type of thing where like it's almost like you both forgot to turn off the Bluetooth part of your brain that's searching for connections. It's like, whoop, chips in the night, wee. And we spent like an hour and a half just talking about how superhero content should not be live action.
Yeah.
Because the point of superheroes is that everything is larger than life, or just like so like theatrical and fantastical that it's either going to be a bunch of CGI or it's going to be shitty because it's scaled down to like reality. That happens in the action in this show, and I'm going to complain about that later. But I think that that's also what happens with everybody's emotions here. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
no, I agree.
In the manga and the anime, everything's so big. Everything's cranked up to 11, right? Like, it's why anime, when it's good, it's great. It's why when wrestling is good, it's great. I just realized that's a Frankie in a bath towel that you have over there. Or is that just Frankie, or not Frankie, Brooke in a white kimono?
This Brooke in a white kimono.
He stared at me while I was making my point. Distracted me. Right. And so like, it's why wrestling works. It's why anime works. It's that all of these moments are taken to an 11. And granted, in an anime and a manga, you have more time to build to those moments. So like the moment just gets more credibility because of the investment that you have in it. But also the dialogue is clunky. And that's true in the anime as well. But what the anime doesn't have is human beings having to maintain that emotion and project that through the clunky dialogue. They have voice actors who get to take takes and get to hide everything so that they can make their voice be what it needs to be, right? So like, I don't know. I think they were just given an unfair task. Like, I think this way a lot with the actor who played Luffy. Like, his quiet moments and his like sad moments, not that good.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
he's the only one that I think I might blame the actor. And I'm sure he's getting a lot of shit right now for the fact that he's not a native English speaker. His accent's not what like holds him back. It's fine. Honestly, I really like the fact that people have accents in this show. Because we shouldn't all have learned English or Common or Galactic Basic or whatever it is that they call it in One Piece. We shouldn't all have learned it from the same like school. Like, some of us are going to learn it in Pirate Austria. Some of us are going to learn it in Pirate Paraguay, right? Like,
yeah.
And so it makes sense. But I do think it has something to do with the fact that he's 20. And he's been given the task of playing a character who originally has very little dialogue in the grand scheme of things. Luffy has the most dialogue he ever has, the smaller the cast is. And that's just how it happens, right? Like, there are less characters to be communicating things with. But they have Luffy talking in this show. But Luffy as a character has one gear go epic winning, right? Like, he just goes burr all of the time. And so, like, this actor, when he was, like, in Luffy's big, like, unflappable, always smiling moments, that's Luffy. Yeah. Like, you look at him, you see him, like, you hear him, you're like, that's Luffy. But then in those moments of doubt, Luffy doesn't have them that often. There's more of Luffy doubting himself in the adaptation than there is in the manga or in the anime, to my recollection.
Yeah, I agree. I think he definitely has more. They definitely try to tone down the characters in this.
Humanize them a lot. Yeah. I think Zoro's pretty one for one, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So Sanji. Sanji's actually a lot more likable.
Oh, yeah, dude. I actually wrote that down. I honestly love Sanji's portrayal in this.
He's kind of just a bro. He needs his eyebrows. I get not giving Usopp his nose because A, it's just going to look silly, and B, like, prosthetic budget. But, like, shave that boy and draw on some eyebrows. Give me the curly cues.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. I'm kind of glad they left that out because I feel like it's like you either do one or you do both.
You either coward, Forrest.
You either do neither or you do both.
That's fair. I will on that. Speaking of, like,
but they
aesthetics,
do Buggy's nose. So
they do
like,
Buggy's nose.
Like, yeah, I don't know.
Speaking of aesthetics, I really like. So there are a couple of times in this show where I put down, this is like Tim Burton by way of Wes Anderson. Like, this is if Tim Burton directed the Grand Budapest Hotel, or if Wes Anderson directed The Nightmare Before Christmas. Like, the way that things are framed, the way that things are shot, the way that things, like the lighting and the coloring and the camera effects, although there are some camera effects that I would not besmirch either of those directors with.
I mean, dude, all the close-ups, bro. Like, God, I was getting so sick of that shit.
But but in general, the sets and the props, they kept a lot of things, like, photo accurate. Yeah. It's just unfortunate that photo accurate anime shit looks goofy in real life.
Yeah.
But also, like, what if Wes Anderson and Tim Burton directed, like, an adult-oriented Lazy Town? Like, a lot of, like, the sets and, like, the props look like something you'd see in a kid's show. Like, Robbie Rotten could have come in waving a net and a banana, and I'd be like, oh, yeah. Yeah. Like, just the way that everything looks and feels.
Well, I guess, like, I think the sets and stuff feel really good, but, like, the costumes especially definitely feel like more like stage play costumes.
I think it's because it's in an uncanny valley, almost. I was also thinking about the costumes a lot because they keep things very, like, one-for-one photo, like, accurate to the anime. But on human beings and on fabric that has to move and be around, it just doesn't work out. And I think that's what, like, a lot of, I did also put down that, like, a lot of the show feels like it's in an uncanny valley because it is, like, the anime emotions, the anime looks, but on people.
Well, and I was going to say earlier, like, when you were talking about the emotions, like, I do feel like something we should say is, I don't necessarily think this live action should have ever happened. Like, I don't know if this was necessary at all.
Oh, no, no.
But it is, like, it is obviously a discussion that's going to be had that, like, you just can't replicate anime in live action because the whole point of anime, the whole point of cartoons and drawing is you can literally do whatever you want. You can't literally do everything you want in live action unless you have like infinite budget.
Yep.
And this already had a massive budget. It was like something
doesn't show.
Well, exactly. But so I think I don't know the exact numbers, but I think the budget was something like 16 million per episode or some shit. It's like one of the most expensive shows that's ever existed. But I think that they genuinely put most of that towards the sets, because I mean, I've never produced a fucking TV show. I don't know what it requires to make stuff like that. But like, you could tell that they put a lot of love and care into the sets, and I'm sure that requires a lot of staff, you know. I'm sure that requires a lot of manpower, but you know, it does then fall flat on a lot of other visual aspects, like the CGI, like the action, you know. And like it sucks, because I feel like we live in a period where, you know, people get upset when they see a really big budget and they're like, oh, this is trash. But it's like, I don't know. It's so hard to properly like gauge how much of that budget was put towards certain things.
Well, I wonder how much the budget takes into account like the licensing of the characters.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, no, I'm sure it's
like I legitimately just don't know if that's included in budget projections or not. I don't know if that's like the standard for it.
Yeah, so this says the budget for One Piece allegedly sat at around 17.2 million per episode.
I mean, to be fair, that is the Cosmopolitan.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true. Don't quote me on that. But
except they're cookies, Forrest. Anyway, while you're looking at that, like, it is one of those things where, so to actually touch on the practical effects, I was actually thinking a lot that I'm glad that they leaned more practical effects than they did CGI.
Oh, I mean, me too.
Like post-doc. Like, all of the fishmen are all people with prosthetics. Some of them look worse than others. But on balance, the important fishmen look pretty good. One of the fishmen, they got rid of his big long lips, which is fair, especially because... So, Forrest. Okay, so I have a question, but it is definitely spoiler territory. So do we want to walk through the events of the East Blue first as the show handles it?
Sure. Yeah.
So Luffy is in a barrel. Actually, we watched Luffy basically pull a Jack Sparrow and start sinking. So he puts himself in a barrel. Gets fished up by this woman who's fat for a joke. Meets up with this little boy. I say little boy. He's like Luffy's age, give or take. But he's small. Frees the boy. Beats the woman. It's kind of just as nothing in the anime as it was in the show. Watching her, Elvita,
yeah.
living Elvita Loca. I was looking at her, and I thought to myself, she should be bigger, just more large of a person. And what I thought to myself is they need to cast more wrestlers as actors.
I mean, yeah.
Like, Samoa Joe is the body of Sweet Tooth in the new Twisted Metal show on Paramount. Like, John Cena's everywhere.
Yeah.
Dave Bautista is also in a lot of places. Like, Dwayne The Rock Johnson was a wrestler.
Yeah.
He comes back to be disruptive to plot lines every now and then. Like, more places should be comfortable giving wrestlers that leap, especially if it's an action-based character, because Elvita, she is just there in the show to be mean and do fights.
Mm-hmm.
You know who's good at doing fights? Awesome Kong.
Yeah.
From TNA, right? Like, you know who's good at doing violence? Oh, actually, she's an anti-vaxxer, so I'm not going to plug her. But my point stands,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that. Like, I do think there's really nothing to write home about with Alvida. She's just kind of there. Yeah, and it's like stuff like Luffy's introduction, honestly, nowhere near as impactful as I think it is in the manga, because it's like, I love the way that he just like bursts out of the barrel in the middle of this room and Alvida is just literally right there. Like, but in this, he kind of just like climbs out of the barrel and then Kobe's there, and there's no like surprise, or there's just like not as much drama to it. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, he's there.
I don't think the first scene was particularly dramatic. I mean, it was dramatic insofar as the stage, the theater, like it was a big moment.
No, I mean,
but
it was
a comedy moment through and through originally. I think it is a very different vibe, but I also think that they couldn't keep the same vibe.
That's fair. Yeah.
Specifically because we had already seen Luffy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of vibe in this that they do just kind of change, I feel like.
Oh, before I go on much further, can I just talk about how much of a coward the show adapters are? Not a single yayo. How dare you, sir, deny me my 4 kids' lineage. And also, Gold Roger doesn't say the One Piece.
Wait, he didn't?
No, I was watching. Gold Roger doesn't call his he doesn't say, and I left it all in one piece. He gets a lot more philosophical about freedom.
Because I remember Luffy saying that line.
Yes, no, they just talk about it after that scene as if everybody knows that it's colloquially the One Piece. But Gold Roger,
I feel like I need to rewatch that scene again.
Gold Roger just sits there talking about freedom and courage and riches. That's yours for the taking. Go to sea. And then people start running out to sea. We don't get the name drop.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I don't know why I didn't even notice that.
I had feelings about it.
No, I mean, I definitely think that Roger's death scene was all right. Like, it literally was nothing to write home about. Like, I think the actor they got looked pretty solid in the part, but yeah, I don't know.
That being said, yeah. So then they find themselves, after stealing a dinghy, they find themselves going to a marine island where that's sort of under the control of a corrupt marine, and then that's where they meet up with Zoro and Nami, which I don't believe Nami was there in the anime.
No, she like shows
Nami
up.
was in.
I think you see her, like you might see her running from someone, but she doesn't show up really until the buggy stuff.
That's what I remembered.
But they definitely, they have to compact a lot into this show.
And this, I do honestly think that this is a good example of what I was saying earlier, where they compress things and they change things, right? Like, if you watch this and then just cut to the episode that in the anime where the events of this leave off, you can't go up and carry out every conversation with every One Piece fan about One Piece, but you can do most of them.
Yeah.
You can't then go, hey guys, remember when Buggy put Luffy in that tank of water? They're going to look at you like you just grew a second head. But as far as understanding what's happening and talking broad strokes about the East Blue, you're there, right? One of those being Nami. We get introduced to her early, but she's Nami. She's Nami right away. She is that sort of not conniving, because that feels sexist, but this sort of plotting, she's up to something, espionage character. We're introduced to Zoro right away. We're introduced to Baroque works.
Yeah.
In Zoro's introductory scene.
Well, I don't.
Another one of those things that you're not going to see for a while.
That's something that I don't know if you know, but the fight that Zoro gets introduced in with Mr. Seven, that's not something that happened in the manga at all.
No, yeah.
And that's actually something that Zoro mentions when they're on Whiskey Peak, which is like that island before Alabasta, where they like. That's like basically where Vivi kind of like joins them. He mentions that he like fought a member of Baroque Works before then, and then in like a question corner, Oda confirmed that he fought this guy named Mr. Seven. And then I guess the showrunners for this like brought that to Oda and specifically were like, we want to do this in the live action. And Oda literally didn't even remember that he wrote that.
Oh, wow. The guy who everyone goes on about always doing everything intentionally all of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of moved past that. I don't think Oda does everything intentionally, but I do think he's really good at keeping track. I do think he's really good at keeping track of his shit at the very least, which some authors aren't. And so it's just like, it was cool that they decided to introduce this thing that was, canon, but we never got to see, and like throw it in the live action.
For as much as I talk shit on Oda, I will admit there is not an Araki forgot moment for Oda so far.
I think there's a few things like that throughout the story, but it's like, those things are so few and far between. It's still like incredibly impressive that he's managed to like maintain and like, just like keep all of his shit straight.
Anyway, not comparing it to the anime.
Yeah.
A kerfuffle happens. They get the better of them. Luffy pulls the folks, Zoro and Nami. Kobe stays behind to become a Marine.
Yes.
Now, I did say...
Can I say one thing about Zoro in this? Like...
Is it how hot he is when he's in the yard?
I was just kind of upset with the way that they introduced the three sword style. Like... It's just not like that moment is just so iconic to me, and like they kind of removed the whole portion where like Luffy goes to grab Zoro's swords, and that's kind of the thing that like turns Zoro to his side. But in this, it's just like Zoro gets his swords back on his own, and then he's leaving, and then he's like, no, I'm gonna stay. Like it kind of like removes a lot of the emotional weight that like Zoro joins Luffy, because Luffy actually kind of like did something for him other than just like let him go,
I will agree that there is a fair amount of like, and I was thinking about this myself when I was watching it, that there is that again, because I had to compress so much, there is a lot of like, all right, I guess we're vibing.
Yeah.
Like, I guess this is crew. And when Zoro I'm jumping out a little bit, when Zoro talks about how like there's a bit where he's talking with Nami, which happens a lot more in this show than in the anime, which honestly I think works out to both of their betterment as characters. But there's something thought you didn't have a reason to do X, Y, or Z, and then Zoro blatantly goes, I thought so too until I met him. And it's like, all right, this is a little bit of telling and not showing, but we're on a time crunch. I get it. However, I will say, as far as the introduction to the three sword style goes, I don't think the moment was that cool.
Exactly.
Originally either.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I think when I was like 10, I thought it was really cool, but looking at it,
what? Just like him stopping a bunch of swords? Like that's cooler than what he did in the live action. Like in the live action, he literally just like put the sword in his mouth and then like, oh my god, he's stronger. He can like hit the man back really far.
I mean, like, every combat scene in the live action was at best comfortably okay.
Well, yeah, I think the thing that they did best with the combat in this is the impacts. Like, I actually was very impressed at how well they landed. Like,
I thought the opposite. I thought all of the hits felt very empty.
Really? Like, when he hits Captain Morgan in the head, like, I felt that impact really hard. When he punched Alvida, I also felt like it had a lot of impact. I don't know why we feel so differently about that.
I mean, like the big finishers are big finishes.
Yeah.
But like the like.
Well, I mean, like the normal punches, whatever. But I guess I was more so talking about like when Luffy did his like arching kick and like smacked Morgan in the head, and Morgan went
Again,
flying.
the big finishers are big finishers, but like the actual like fight scenes, like
That's
throughout
fair.
the fight scenes are like, and I don't think it's any of the actors' fault. I didn't look into any of like their acting history, but I also think that like from what I could see, like they didn't do that much action, but also like they're doing live action combat in long panning shots. Like the fights don't cut that much, which can be cool if everybody is very well rehearsed and very well choreographed. Look at John Wick, for example.
Yeah.
But just by nature of what this is, it like the time wasn't there.
Well, yeah, from what I understand about like these Netflix productions in general is that like they don't get much time at all to like rehearse choreography and stuff like that. So I don't think like the general like history of Netflix fights are kind of meh. Like I like the best Netflix fights I think are like in the Daredevil show. I don't know if you ever watched that. But
Yes.
but like
Stairwell.
just like the choreography and stuff in that was like pretty top notch. But like that's like the best stuff I think I've
And
ever
I
seen
think
on
the choreography, as far as like what's happening in this show, is fine.
Yeah.
I think it's good even in some scenes, but the actual like shooting of it is
Yeah,
pretty
that's-
mid.
okay, yeah.
And I think part of it is because of a reason that I actually respect quite a lot is they do limit the amount of special effects. Like pretty much most of what you see in fights are people doing people things. Obviously, when Luffy gets all stretchy, it's CGI. When they start doing some flying shit, it's wire work and a little bit of CGI. Like, there is definitely CGI in it, but it's not like, you know, look at the last 4 Marvel movies. And
Yeah.
like,
yeah.
right, like, it's not that. But again, because they keep it, like, relative to the human body, the fights are less epic because it's people doing things. There are a couple of very funny moments where they do very anime leaps in flies, and it
Yeah.
like cuts to CGI to like smooth over like the wire transition.
Yeah.
And those are very funny. But again, like it's not like any of the actors did a bad job. I will say the standing there and dodging like sword swipes, those were pretty egregious because those swords weren't even close to begin with.
What
But
are you
again,
are you talking
Zoro
about,
is so hot that it was okay.
Are you talking about like the enemies dodging Zoro's?
No, like Zoro and the crew just like fast guy dodging. Wow, wow.
Oh yeah.
But again, because it's they're limiting the special effects, and because it's people doing it, like the shots are wide. Like, but then the big thing with fight scenes for me were the wide panning shots. And I think if you combine a limited rehearsal time with those wide panning shots, what you get is the best you can do, you know, and not like actually like really well polished moments.
Yeah.
Another brief note on the camera. Did you ever consume Homestar Runner?
No.
It's like the Trogdor guy.
I think I've heard of it, but yeah, no.
So there's a song about the magical mystical fisheye lens and how it makes everything cooler. And it's very much like poking fun at like early 2000s like hip hop videos and like home skate tricks videos. God, a lot of these scenes, especially the dramatic ones, there's a scene where the crew is looking at a bounty board and it's a fisheye lens of them and like the street that they're on, and then it's fisheye lens of like not close-ups, but like they're in the corner of the screen in a fisheye lens, and I just kept thinking Homestar Runner the entire time.
I just like
F to the I to the
all the close-ups in this are just so egregious. Like it's just like, why? Like just stop zooming in on people's faces. And I feel like they must have thought that, oh, like they do that a lot in the manga. Like that's a common thing in manga because you can do that. Like when you're drawing characters close up, it doesn't look cringy, but like
I would argue that it doesn't look cringy most of the time.
in this,
It does, however, because of where it's cut in the general dialogue.
Yeah, I
feel
guess.
very disruptive. Now the close-ups where it's a close-up and a fisheye lens effect.
I think
That's
the only
some like undergraduate like
the
art degree
only
shit.
close up that I love in this show is when they're in Captain Morgan's office and Luffy just like has the like spotting scope and he just turns it to Nami and he's just zoomed in on her face and you're just like, okay, Luffy. Like I love all of their interactions in that first segment. Like Luffy and
Captain
Nami.
Morgan being the corrupt Navy guy who's running this island.
Yeah.
Captain Morgan has an axe for a hand, and there's a moment where he fucking backhands a character. I think it's his son.
His
I
own
forget.
son, yeah.
But I saw that and I giggled so hard for like the
That
rest of
was
the episode
so silly.
because my mind went backhand. And I couldn't take anything that was being said seriously. And the only note that I have highlighted for that entire episode is backhand. Yeah. And that's like a lot of what happens here. Forrest mentioned that Zoro goes and gets his swords back. What he forgets to mention is that Captain Morgan, spoiled shithead son, who likens himself a strong, fancy lad, is practicing not sword forms, but looking cool and swinging Zoro swords in the nude in front of a mirror.
Yeah.
Which, honestly, the funniest thing that character's ever done in any adaptation.
And then I do kind of love that they use that as like an excuse to like give him his hairstyle from the manga, because like Zoro just like cuts his hair off. Like he starts with longer hair and then like
And then he gets that bowl cut.
yeah, which that's a funny way of like writing that in, but like I don't know. I almost feel like this stuff took longer than it did in the anime.
That's objectively incorrect.
No, it isn't, because all of the stuff that happens in the first like 2 episodes happens in the first like 3 episodes of the anime.
Maybe like up to this point. But
No, I'm not talking about like the whole thing, but like the stuff at the Marine base, because they add Nami, it takes like quite a bit longer because they use this as the like introduction for Nami, which is fine because then like all the shit with Buggy takes like a fraction of the time that it did.
My boy. They get a ship and they fuck off. But Kobe stays behind to become a Marine because that's his dream. He doesn't want people to be oppressed by powerful folks who are outside the law. So he wants to be a lawman. And in the anime, it's very powerful because it's like, hey, we're on 2 sides of this, but you're a good guy, and I think you're a good, like, they both respect each other. They both think that they're good guys. And it's like, hell yeah, man, follow your dream. And then we don't see them for like 40 volumes.
Yeah, the only time that you see Kobe past that point is in like cover stories, which is kind of where a lot of this stuff with Garp and Kobe comes from. Like they kind of just like fleshed out, like you kind of get to see little snippets of like what Kobe and Helmeppo are doing with Garp throughout cover stories. And that's like it for like 400 chapters.
And so, you know, in the anime, when like they disappear, it's like a fond farewell. And then they are reunited later, much later, past the events of what happens in the anime or in the adaptation. But we then have a B plot where Kobe and Morgan's son are being trained by this badass Marine by the name of Garp, who's Scottish. Real fucking green Power Ranger energy.
Garp.
Garp's kind of in the uncanny valley of, hey, this guy's pretty cool, and all right, serial killer, slow down. Like,
Yeah.
just like he swings back and forth in tone because he is like this secondary antagonist, but he's also just like this mentor figure. And so like there's not a lot of consistency there.
That
in
was
my opinion.
something that I like really wanted to talk about because I feel like his characterization is just so fascinating because at this point in the story initially, we literally like don't have a characterization for him. And even honestly up to this point where we're at currently in the story, we still don't really have that strong of a characterization of Garp. I would say only recently did we get to know what he's like. But even in this, I feel like he's much more intense than I imagine him. Like, he's a hard ass for sure, but I feel like in this he's a lot more like, oh yeah, the Navy, we're gonna defeat the pirates, like over and over again.
That's fair. But they fuck off. Last note that I'm going to have for a while about the practical effects. I love transponder snails just being around still. They're weird and stupid. And so I'm glad that they kept them. But God, they're so unsettling to look at.
I mean,
because again, it's a practical effect. So it's this snail with these like weird like Muppet lips that's talking, but like not in time with the words. It's flapping, and Garps has a mustache. And it's so upsetting.
I also hate how he like fucking is feeding one at one point.
Yeah,
and you just see it's like real ass like human teeth on this like weird snail creature.
Throughout my notes, whenever a transponder snail is in shot and talking, I just have stop making me look at the snail. They are genuinely a little upsetting.
It's one of those things where I feel like people are either going to love it or hate it, because I have seen some people online be like, oh yeah, I love that they like chose to go with the practical side of things for that, which I agree with, but it is incredibly unsettling.
I also love it. I love how upsetting it is. Yeah. Like, I'm so glad that I would not remove a single transponder snail. But
how much of the budget do you think went into just making the transponder snail?
Probably not enough to matter. But yeah, and then that episode ends with Buggy's in wherever he's at doing this big chair splay, being told of what's happening, and it's such a cool setup. And then Buggy's guys kidnap the three of them because they have a thing, and the thing that they have is a map of the Grand Line, which is MacGuffin the region as far as the One Piece universe is set up. Luffy balloons it. Ballooning is like a smuggling thing where you swallow a balloon or a condom full of things and then it like either pass it or like tie it to a string like attached to your back tooth. Luffy balloons the map before they get like picked up by Buggy's guys. And this show doesn't have an intro. It just has a title card. So it's cold open title card show.
But we didn't
each episode has a different. So like the classic One Piece iconography of the O and the I being like things. Buggy's is so cool.
I think all of
Buggy's
those
hat is so cool.
Yeah, I love all of those intro logos, but also like, how did you feel about the like the way that the bounty posters show up?
The bounty posters being like a title card, like introduction for the characters that are like pseudo in universe there, but also not.
Yeah,
and
I love that the like
They're
character
really cool.
gets to interact with it. Like Buggy just like grabs his. It's just like,
yeah, it's really cool.
It's a really cool idea.
Yeah, and then we have Buggy. Buggy has made this town and this village into like this big top circus where he's like forcing everyone to applaud at this weird fucked up show, and like they're in manacles and the like. Yeah, Buggy gets menacing in ways that are really good. The Buggy actor is a very different vibe for Buggy, but plays his Buggy so well. Buggy gets like Buggy gets philosophical. Like, he has real like, I mentioned earlier that like this depiction's a little bit more jokery. And again, I think like you just sort of can't have a clown villain in media without inviting the parallel anymore. But in this case in particular, like he kind of grandstands on some like comments on we live in a society, right? He never says that, but he has like some bits about like outsiders and like values of society, and that's like really where I'm just like, all right, slow down there, sir, before you start dyeing that hair green. Speaking of hair, the wigs in this show are so bad.
Yeah.
We asked where that budget was going, and it wasn't to the wigs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess we literally haven't talked about Shanks like at all. That was something that we get introduced to.
This Shanks actor really gets the vibe of Shanks.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, like we get Luffy's backstory, flashbacks. He was a kid in a town, found this pirate dude super cool, and to be fair, Shanks is my dad. Fun fact. Really cool. I love Shanks.
He's my biological father.
And I don't mean the actor. I mean, no, like Shanks is a very cool character, very cool guy. He's kind of like Luffy's role model growing up. Some shenanigans happen. He loses an arm saving Luffy because Luffy didn't fucking listen to him.
And this is also when Luffy gets his devil fruit, where he becomes rubber.
And there's a scene where Shanks stares down this sea demon, which is like this big monster. And it's not the show's fault, because if they didn't have him say something, it would have been weird and you couldn't really tell what's going on. But him verbally instructing the sea demon to run away was a lot less cool than him just fucking death glaring it to the point where it was terrified, right? And that was just like a little minor thing.
Wait, does he not say anything in the manga?
I don't believe so. I remember it just being a stare. Anyway,
Yeah.
Buggy is actually so legitimately upsetting. Like, the actor does a really great job of being menacing. And, like, which is hard to do when you're a stupid little clown man. Even though he is, like, a bit grittier. But it's hard to do when you're a stupid little clown man. And he does a really great job of it. It is also worth noting that, like, there are just, like, side characters that just aren't in the show. One of them being Buggy's dancing lion, which they draw attention to that it's not there, which I really like quite a lot.
Yeah, they definitely like strip a lot of the stuff that happens during the Buggy stuff.
Oh yeah, they condense the fuck out of Buggy, which is fine.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely stuff during that I really like, but I don't think it was necessarily made worse. I still love, well, I don't know. I mean, it's like you could take it or leave it. Like, honestly, I love the way that things play out in the manga, but you know, it's like I don't know how much of that is just like nostalgia, because I don't think either way was necessarily worse or better. It was just like they kind of just play out in different manners.
I think the Buggy, like the way that up to this point, I legitimately think the way that most things have happened is better in the adaptation. Because you get the points without having to spend the time introducing things.
That's fair.
Like, I think, like, Buggy didn't have to be any longer than it was.
Yeah.
Nami gets to kick ass, which is kind of cool. Just like throughout the adaptation, Nami just gets to be part of action sequences that she was nowhere near powerful enough to be a part of in the anime. So it's neat that she gets to be more important. Motherfuckers just die in this show. Like, this show's got such a weird tonal dissonance because, like I was saying earlier, it very much feels like a Lazy Town, like, live action kids show as far as like things are stylized and look. But like we were talking about Zoro in Mr. Seven, he puts what's left of his body in a bag and we see his hair sticking out of it for like 3 scenes after that.
Yeah, I know. Like, he just strolls into a bar with his like man cut in half in a body bag.
Like Elvira, we watch her crush a man's head. We don't see the head, but like we see her bring it down, and like we see like this like puddle of goop.
Yeah, I feel like the most gruesome stuff happens in those first couple of episodes.
Yeah, they lay it on pretty heavy.
Doesn't really.
Yeah, after this it lightens up.
Yeah, like I feel like even some of the most gruesome injuries that people get later, like Zorro, like aren't even that terrifying, like, or gross. You know, it's just like, oh, he's bleeding a lot.
Yeah. The outro is disappointing because in general I don't necessarily like the music in this show. I really like the suspenseful music. They turn Usopp's recruitment arc into kind of more of a horror story, which again is just better. Yeah. But like the outro is just like a pretty generic, like most of the other soundtrack is just like generic, like trying to be epic but isn't, like fantasy or like adventure stuff.
Yeah, it's trying to be very I feel like it's trying to take a lot from like Pirates of the Caribbean, like soundtrack wise, but just like doesn't really hit the mark. It doesn't like have any themes that are like incredibly memorable. Yeah,
and I think it is one of those things where like my complaint I think may not necessarily be fair, right? Because it's not trying to be an anime.
Yeah.
Except for it kind of is sometimes, but
it's like, dude,
it's not trying to be an anime, so it's not fair to compare it to like anime songs. But even with what it's trying to do, it feels like a generic version of a lot of orchestration.
Yeah. Well, there's like apparently the people that did this did like the soundtrack for like the Witcher series too, which also kind of had a meh soundtrack. But there's so much music from the anime that is good. I really like, but also even the One Piece music in the anime is all right. Like there's like themes that I remember because they play during certain moments, but that's like literally about it. Like other than that, like honestly, they just use the same music over and over again throughout like the 1,000+ episodes of the anime.
Fair enough. And then we pick up Usopp at his island. Usopp is a much better character in this adaptation. I think why is he's still lying. He's still Tall Tales Usopp, but it feels like he knows we know, you know? Whereas like in the anime and in the manga, like Usopp legitimately feels like he's trying to convince people. The way that the dialogue structured and shaped in the scenes that we see, it feels like Usopp's in on the idea that nobody believes him. And that he's doing this because, hey, I'm the Tall Tales guy, you know?
Yeah. I definitely think that Usopp gets kind of the short end of the stick, though. Like, I do enjoy his character, but, like, he never gets a chance to shine, like, at all.
But he also doesn't get a chance to shine until ever.
I mean,
I also don't think that his original like
but he doesn't like get to do anything in his own arc.
Yeah,
like,
and that's also true.
Like literally, like that might be the case in the I know I keep comparing it to the anime, but anyway, like I kind of disliked the fact that they decided to kind of thrust Zoro's whole backstory into this.
Yeah, Zoro gets thrown down a well.
Which was just like so, I don't know. I was just like, why?
That was the one bit about this where I'm like, all right, this is a little weird.
And it's like
as he's climbing out of the well, he like gets like inspirationally flashed back to his backstory, which is pretty one for what his backstory was.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more misogynistic feeling in the adaptation, and I think it's just because we didn't have as much time to build up to it. But having his female rival as a kid go on about how women are just weaker than men and how a girl can beat a boy but a woman could never beat a man, like having her angrily shout that, like on the one hand, like
I mean that's
the character in the anime, but she was like very much more about like, I will never inherit my family's dojo because I don't have a penis.
Well, in
that was like like an addition to like her like striving to be better. But in the manga, she was a much more, I have to work harder than you because you are just more advantageous in this positioning because you're a boy. So I have to work harder.
yeah.
And versus one day I will lose to you no matter what I do, which is her whole stance here.
Yeah, okay.
Which that
Yeah.
was like kind of
Yeah.
that was pretty much the one like the one adaptation that they made where I'm like,
Well, it kind of just was unfortunate that they just kind of took up so much time during this. Not that like there was much else to do, I guess, ultimately. But it's like you could have given that time to like Usopp to actually get a chance to do something.
I think Usopp is so much more likable though. So
I mean, I agree,
So
but
the way
he
that
doesn't really do much.
I mean, yeah, but you don't. But if you're honest with yourself, he doesn't do much anyway. Like,
yeah.
he's around.
But my point is he could have done more.
They could have made him better than he was in the anime.
Yeah.
As it stands, he's approximately the same. Usopp's whole arc is he's on an island. He was orphaned, so now he does Boy Who Cries Wolf. Pirates are coming because his dad's a pirate, and it's him going on my dad's back. Well, the rich girl on the island, who is his buddy, she's pseudo orphaned and being raised by this butler, who turns out to be a pirate. Captain Kuro, whoever that actor is, did a very good job of being very menacing. The actual like anime plot is that he's going to kill her after transferring all the assets and live like a king, right? And that's more or less what happens here. But instead of like having his crew offshore ready to swoop in, he just has his two big main guys. The one side character that they didn't include that I am upset that they got rid of is Django,
Yeah.
who's Mick Jagger, but a hypnotist.
You see his wanted poster on the wall.
Fair enough.
But yeah, they definitely just like cut him.
And then like all of Captain Kuro's like other crew just don't show up. His two noticeable like ones are there as like infiltrated, like actually bad guy, like
Well, like the hilarious
I really like them actually. Like they're a good duo act, and I like them being there. Kuro does call them inbred, which
yeah.
is one of those. I don't remember that being part of the show.
Well, but also like the interesting part about those characters too is that they literally like don't show up until like the fight happens. Like the whole point is that like Django and Kuro are like the ones that are making the plan.
Yeah, but
I don't mind that they're there. It's just hilarious how they decided to take those two characters and then like made them kind of just like the two.
I think because if you ask most people, they remember those two.
Well, I mean, those are the two. Those are like the people that they have to fight. So it's like it makes sense.
Yeah,
because those are the people that Zoro has to fight.
But then all that really happens. So Kaya's the name of Usopp's friend. And what really happens here is we get a very nice character like humanization moment for Nami. And she gives them a ship. The characterization for Nami and humanization for Nami isn't in the anime. So take that what you will. But instead of like turning it into like, oh, these pirates are attacking, we have to go stand at the beaches and fight them off, it's Kuro locked down the house. We have to go. We have to find a way out. We have to find a way to get Zoro and Luffy back in. Yeah. And it's a much more of like the call is coming from inside the house horror movie. And it really works. Yeah. It's a completely different tone. Very good.
And then Kobe and Garp.
And then Kobe shows up.
Yeah. Well, I guess just Kobe and Helmeppo show up, which is really funny.
2 episodes from the last time. And he runs into Luffy, which is just like...
yeah. Like, it's just like, that's just something that doesn't happen for so long. Originally, it's just so funny.
The actor for Kuro is also very handsome. I have a note here saying he's got that handsome Squidward face going on.
His hair kind of looks...
Yeah, because all of the wigs are bad.
Yeah.
But as like as a guy, very handsome fella. Also Mary, her accountant. It's kind of a nothing character.
But he just gets up.
He actually just died. He like recovered, like he survives but barely in the anime. He's actually just dead in this one.
Which, like, I'm fine with, but it's also, like, it was fascinating because, like, he's literally all that Kaya has left in the original story. And then in this, she's just straight up left with no one. Like, literally the man she thought she trusted tried to kill her. And then
And Usopp fucks off.
the person that she cared about the most other than Usopp dies. And then she's just by herself.
Yup.
It's depressing for sure.
There's a scene in between all of this where like they're trying to be civil at a dinner.
Oh yeah.
And like Kuro hasn't like revealed the plan yet, so he's like awkwardly trying to be a butler. I really like it because we get some characterization between the 3 crew members at this point, and it's really good. Mm-hmm. It's just really good. Like establishing of their dynamic.
I mean, all of their interactions I love. Like, there's really not a point where they're just kind of talking or interacting that I'm not, like, having a good time, you know?
Yeah.
Which is hard to do.
There's a bit where so all 3 characters wake up, all 4, I guess, because Usopp's also awake, wake up to do something. Zoro's looking for more booze. Luffy's looking for more food. And Nami's just going to fucking rob the place. She accidentally finds her way in Kaya's room with a big old bag of stolen shit. And this like the humanization of Nami, where she does just sort of talk like friends, and they point out how neither of them are particularly good at it. And Kaya makes a joke about, Zoro, because Zoro runs into Nami. No. Edit around this. Make me right. When they're getting into the mansion the first time around, Nami basically implies that she's going to rob them. And Zoro goes, "Are you going to rob the place blind?" And she goes, "Maybe a little dizzy." And that's just so fucking funny. I really liked that. Yeah. But anyway, in the Nami-Kaya conversation, there's a line where Kaya says, "I'm tired of people looking at me like I'm about to break." And my heart and soul needed the silence to follow, or that followed, to be filled with everything you send to me.
I do like that Nami. I mean, you were just saying, but it's a very good humanization moment because she's just like, okay, I won't view you that way. Like, if that's what you want, you know.
Yeah. Also, when Zoro's dragging himself out of the well, where the fuck did he get that grappling hook that he was trying to use? Because they didn't toss it down the well. He wasn't carrying it. Mary, the finance guy, definitely didn't have it.
I literally have to rewatch that scene because I don't remember. I don't even know. It might have just been down there or something. I have no clue. Oh, but something I was going to say about like how they, you know, consolidated this whole arc into one location. Like, I definitely feel like they made creative decisions about, like, you know, how the plot was going to play out because they wanted to, like, tone down the number of sets. Because, like, literally, they probably put so much work into all of this mansion that they were just like, we're just going to put everything in the mansion.
That's fair. But I also just think that it works, right? Like, I legitimately do think that this arc is just better. I think part of it is Usopp has 3 side characters in the anime that are obnoxious and at best tertiary. And they're just not around.
Yeah.
Which is good. When they leave, they have a CGI ship, which is fair enough. You're not going to build a ship for, like, the 3 shots of them on the ocean. But it do be looking silly, though. There's also a reverse gear up scene where instead they're bunkering down. And I really liked that because it, like, at this point we're tinged on to the idea that Nami's up to some shit. Like, we've seen her call Arlong behind the boy's back, talking about how she has the thing that Luffy thinks that is theirs as like a family crew type thing. So we already know that she's like got separate allegiances. And so like having a scene where like they're all bunking down on the Mary is like just honestly really powerful. It was like there is some stuff here. Usopp and Luffy doing like a double act is also a lot more powerful in the show, and I think it's just like the physical humor is better. But we get a scene where Garp's in a Hawaiian shirt, and I love that for him.
Oh yeah. Well, I was gonna say that like also I love how like all of the extra like different outfits that the Straw Hats get throughout this show are all ones that like Oda has drawn before. Like they're just all like outfits from different like color spreads or different covers. Like I do like that they, took the time, because like they don't really change outfits often at all in early East Blue, and so it's nice that they like get to like have different outfits, including Garp.
Yeah. We pick up Sanji. Not a lot really happens that's too terribly different from the manga, except
I mean, I was gonna say a lot changes.
The only real difference is that Don Krieg is fucking murked in like 2 seconds by Mihawk.
And then Mihawk just kind of Mihawk shows up there because Garp asks him to, which is also completely different. But
Mihawk is there, and he fucks up Zoro, just like Mihawk is there and he fucks up Zoro.
Yeah, but I do think that the connotations are completely different, because in the anime, it's like Mihawk is just doing this out of like he has no reason to be here other than he was just chasing some random pirate that he wanted to fuck up. But in this, Garp is the one that's like, oh yeah, you're a warlord. Like it definitely sets things up differently, which is not bad. Like I'm not even saying that like one is inherently better than the other, but like it is vastly different because Mihawk shows up for this reason and Garp is like, go after this pirate. And then like like Zoro's just like in the bar and he just sees Mihawk and he's like, oh hey, you're the greatest swordsman in the world, aren't you? Let's fight. But I feel like the fact that in the original story he just kind of shows up and Zoro's like, oh shit, I didn't think I was gonna have this chance, like I'm just gonna fight him,
but
like
he also has that moment where he doesn't know that Mihawk was sent after him, and he pretty much word for word goes, holy shit, I didn't know I was ever going to see you.
Yeah.
Let's slug it out, boy.
Yeah.
And like he has all of the same moments.
He does.
Like he gets there in different ways, but
everything gets there, gets to the same end point. So like
the only real difference is Chef Zeph is fuckable. And instead of fighting Don Krieg at the ship restaurant, they fight Arlong.
Yeah.
And that's a weird one.
I don't necessarily hate that, because like the Don Krieg fight is cool and all, but really that just kind of amounts to Luffy protecting the restaurant, which
I love that that's the point. That's the one that you're like, no, that one. These two are synonymous. Zoro fighting Mihawk. That's not synonymous with Zoro fighting Mihawk.
Well, no. I'm not saying that they're synonymous, because it is a completely different like end point, because like the whole reason for Sanji kind of joining Luffy ultimately is because Luffy like protected the ship, and then like Zeph convinces Sanji to leave, which is pretty much the same in this. Like I know a lot of this is literally like minimal in the grand scheme of things, but the fact that Arlong shows up and is becoming a bigger player at this point is, I think, cool. Like it's kind of more important, because it's like, oh yeah, there is someone bigger that like a bad guy. I don't know. I mean, I feel like
they have a throughout the show, they like the major plot change that they make in the East Blue is they have Arlong be kind of a reoccurring villain. Arlong's kind of hounding Luffy,
Yeah.
looking for the map. Arlong kicks his ass.
Yeah. I do like that Luffy loses here. Like it definitely does raise the stakes because you kind of get because they definitely cut down on a lot of the fighting time during Nami's arc, which is probably for the best, you know. But it's like Luffy loses once to Arlong, then, but instead they just kind of put it
Arlong
here.
fight during Nami's arc is very nothing, and I actually do think it like really just shits the bed for Arlong as a character. Because it is kind of a contrived way of Arlong just sort of being a dumbass.
Yeah.
And that's why he lost. Like, I don't like that. Usopp gets drunk and starts telling stories at the bar, and I really like that. Because that's really what, like, tips me Hawk as to, like, all right, these are the people that I'm looking for. I love that for Usopp. I love Usopp getting drunk and just talking shit.
Yeah.
I'm about to break everything you say.
Sanji's ripped.
Sanji is ripped.
Though, yeah.
Garp goes back and forth between being weird and being kind of a weirdo.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I still haven't really talked about his characterization. Like, I just feel like Garp in this... Like, I feel like Garp in the manga is a bit more, like, kind of happy-go-lucky, like like he's kind of just like joyful, like he's kind of he is a hard ass, but like I feel like in this they definitely made him out to be a lot more of like a, you know, a Navy man, which I feel like throughout the story you kind of get this sense that he doesn't really care about the Navy, like he doesn't like pirates, but he's not like so insanely loyal to the Marines that's like why he's fighting to get, like, you know.
It's weird because, like, on the one hand, kind of like I was saying earlier, he's this father figure for Kobe. And as a result, we see like a very nurturing, very like a gentle side of him. But then we also get like a lot of like ideology, like no, this is not perfect, but we are here to provide stability and protection. And in order to do that, sometimes you just have to break the rules. But then on the other hand, we get like almost some real like serial killer throw lives at the wall until I get what I want energy out of him.
Yeah,
and
well,
it's real weird.
And I was going to say, like, it's interesting how they kind of, like, I feel like there's multiple moments where, like, he's talking about going after the pirates, and, like, that's kind of meant to show that like Kobe is kind of like on the edge, like on the fence about like whether or not they should be going after Luffy, you know. And so it's this weird juxtaposition because I feel like Garp was never that person for Kobe. Like Garp was never like going after Luffy, and Kobe was like hesitant, you know, because Garp never chased after Luffy really until way later down the line, and
even that was just mostly coincidental.
Yeah, and like I definitely feel like they threw all the Garp and Kobe stuff in, you know, to make people more invested in Luffy's story, I do think, because before this, you kind of don't really know anything about Luffy or his past. Like, all you know is the Shanks stuff. But this, I guess we literally haven't even said. But in case you don't want to know, stop listening. Garp is Luffy's grandfather. And that's a huge reveal, like, way down the line. Like, we've already discussed it in our One Piece at a time. But it's like, you don't learn about that until, like, Enies Lobby, which is, like, just way after this. Like... It's a weird thing that they decided to just do this in the East Blue. And I've seen a lot of people talk about this. I don't really know how I feel about it. Like, I don't hate it. Like, I don't think that you knowing that Garp is Luffy's grandfather necessarily ruins your, like, interaction with the story. Like, I saw some people act like, oh, like, that's just, like, a huge spoiler. Like, you shouldn't know that this early on in the game. But it's like... I don't think that affects anything.
We shouldn't know about Garp this early on.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to be upset about anything at all, be upset that Garp's there, period.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't be upset that like, oh, Grandpa. And it's like, well, it doesn't change anything.
Yeah, like it really doesn't change anything about the plot structure. Like I don't think it's a bad thing for them to have introduced it. But I almost kind of wish that they had just had Smoker be the one that was chasing Luffy. Because then when Smoker comes in the next season, which is inevitably happening at this point, like...
It's been renewed, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, you would care much more about Smoker if he had already been chasing Luffy.
But he'd also seem like a lot bigger of a loser.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, they're definitely setting him up to be a bigger villain.
A bigger deal, to be sure.
Which actually I'm kind of excited for, because if that's the case, then like maybe we are actually going to see more of Smoker and Tashigi in the second season, because in the anime you don't really see them at Logtown when the Straw Hats get away and go to the Grand Line, and then you like don't see them again until like Alabasta. Like I think you might see them like kind of going along the same path occasionally here and there, but like I don't know, it'll be interesting to see for sure.
And then Arlong's theme is some real Street Fighter 6 energy. Like it sounds like a song right out of Street Fighter 6. So Buggy was helping Arlong track Luffy, and then Luffy steals Buggy's head. Buggy has the chop fruit, by the way, so he can just like separate bits of his body.
And go absurd distances, like without dying, which kind of is crazy.
Don't ask me how he's been eating if his body's been in one place and his head's been in another. We don't need to talk about that.
Yeah.
I choose to believe that it's a pipette that they put into his neck cup. Sorry. That was really real. So Buggy had one of his ears in Luffy's hat band. And so Luffy stole Buggy and he's like, hey, you know where they are. So the next episode starts with Buggy's head. So Nami betrays the Straw Hats to save Luffy's life. Like, Arlong's about to kill him, and she's like, well, I'll just toss him in the sea. We can get on our fucking way. It gives them time to drag up Luffy. Arlong leaves. Next episode opens with Sanji being a bro and teaching Luffy about fishing. And Usopp and Zoro sailing / getting directions from Buggy's head. And Buggy's just such a fun fucking character in this show. He's so fun. Yeah. He basically insults them to the point where they're like, all right, let's mess him up. And he's like, oh, hang on, guys. We can be friends. Then he starts like a sea shanty. And they drop him in the barrel right before the shanty gets sexual about Nami. Who's just handled objectively better as a character in this show.
Well, I mean, so is
She's
Sanji.
not awkwardly sexualized in ways that make me uncomfy.
Well, and Sanji's not like
Sanji's
overly horny. Like
Sanji's just a cool dude.
Like he has his flirtatious moments, but they're like toned down so much that it like works. It's like
And like outside of those, like Sanji's kind of shown as like disinterested or just sort of dismissive of the male crew members, or just like his interactions with dudes are just like not a lot. Yeah. But I don't know if it's the dialogue or the way that the actor is doing it. Like he feels so much more of just like a personable, approachable guy when talking with people who aren't women, as opposed to in the anime where if he's not being horny with a woman, he's not doing anything. Whereas here he's like just sort of being a friend, being a pal.
I mean, something I completely forgot to even talk about during the Sanji stuff was like, or I guess more so during the Mihawk versus Zoro thing, was like Zoro's pledge to Luffy at the end of that fight was not very good.
Zoro made 3 pledges on the inside of 5 minutes, each of which with the forfeit of his life.
And it's
so
just
either
like,
your life doesn't mean that much or the forfeits are dumb.
I just think
I don't think it's a problem with like those pledges happen.
Yeah.
Regardless. But because they are so condensed, they do lose a lot of their momentum.
Well, and I just think he didn't put like, I feel like he could have put more emotion into the acting, you know?
I don't think so, because like I just think it was a different take. It wasn't as stoic. It wasn't as quiet, like, or like even like outraged badassery. It's a man who's broken.
Yeah.
And this is something he is doing to give himself something to cling to.
Yeah. Fair.
I just think it's a different interpretation. Not to say that you're wrong, but also fuck you. We catch Nami. So Nami's village, and we figure this out over the course of the next episode and some change. Nami's village was taken over by Arlong, who's a fishman. Fishmen are real strong. And he's just sort of been terrorizing this section of the East Blue. Arlong kills her mom, whose wig is not good, but it's less silly than her haircut in the anime and manga. And I think it's just because like the undercut's not as... It's like an under faux pony cut. It's a lot. I love her, though. She's a wonderful character. Arlong kills her mom. Adoptive mom, I should say. Because that's like some of like Nami's like part of the reason why Nami's a bitch. She had enough money to either pay for her life or for Nami and her sister, and she chose to pay for Nami and her sister. So then Nami signs up with Arlong, becomes part of his crew, agrees to make him maps on behalf of being able to buy her village back from him. Well, he's Arlong, so he doesn't honor it, but... And Arlong Park just sort of happens. We catch Nami, because she's part of Arlong's crew, playing cards with the rest of the crew members. And she's sharking them at cards. Because Arlong's a shark.
Good one.
Okay. Apart from that, like, not a lot happens here. Buggy just gets to be around more, which I enjoy. There's a flashback where Arlong's wearing a fedora. And I just found that very funny.
I think that happens in the manga too. Fedora Shark Man is real.
Nami, we know as the audience at this point that Nami's doing all of this, even though she doesn't want to. But Luffy's like, hey, come on, we're crew, I'm going to help you. And she's like, no, you don't know me. Get out of here. And yes, we know that she is actually in over her head and scared. Luffy doesn't, so he's just sort of not taking no for an answer. But she makes a very good point, where she just basically goes, you don't know me. You know the me that you want me to be. And yes, we as the audience have the benefit of knowing that she's scared and pushing people away. But she's not wrong, you know? Like...
Yeah, but that's like Luffy's character to a T. Like, that's what happens. Like, he literally never learns anything about Nami's past. Like, the only thing he knows about Nami's past is, like, basically at the end of the fight when he, like, realizes that they're in this room that she's been held captive in. And, like... I think there is a bit of suspension of disbelief that has to happen here because it's like Luffy's character is just that way. Like the whole point of Luffy's character is that he doesn't know anything about you, but if he's had an interaction with you and you've been friendly to him, he's going to help you. And that's just kind of who he is.
Yeah. And I mean, like, this is one of those things where like I was saying earlier, it plays a lot differently in live action than it does in like anime or manga. Like, there are bits where Luffy almost feels serial killery.
Well, I was actually just watching a video where they were like, Luffy in the live action straight up just seems like he's autistic, which I don't necessarily know. I have no gauge of saying if that's true or not. But
would you like to explain why, so that doesn't sound awkwardly ableist?
Yeah, well, I mean, in this video, they were just talking about how, like, the way that he is so just, like, kind of detached from what the people around him care about. Like, he's just kind of like, yeah, you're cool. I'm just going to go do my own thing. It might be ableist, but, like, it was just an interesting take that I saw, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, like, I can see the reasoning behind the take, but just letting some more context to the statement.
Yeah.
Because the way that he acts definitely would imply that he's not able to either attenuate or act on social cues. Yeah. There's definitely some activities that he takes, especially when he gets sad for a bit and he sits and fiddles with his hat and they're trying to figure out how to like make him feel better. that also was almost like a spectrum disorder coded feeling moment where like they're giving him these opportunities and he's not making eye contact. He's doing something else. He's externalizing. He's stimulating himself with this hat. Like there are definitely moments where like I can see where that point's coming from.
But it's just fascinating because it's like in the in the source material, it's like that's just the way he acts. Like he is a cartoon character. Like that is just who he is. Like he's just out there. He's crazy. He's funny. That's the whole point. But it is interesting watching it like be translated to a real person and how that
the
happens.
energy of Luffy just doesn't translate. Like the energy of anime just doesn't translate to live action.
Yeah.
And Luffy is a good example of that. Forrest, I remember that I remember Arlong talking about fishmen being the superior race. Is all of this slavery conversation, is all of that in the anime about like the history of enslavement of the
I guess I don't really recall if that is something that he specifically talks about during that point of the story, but the whole like enslavement of fishmen is a very real thing in the One Piece universe, and like I just don't remember if Arlong brings it up that early or if that's something we learn later down the line, but it is a very real thing. Like the whole, I mean, the fishmen are literally just an allegory for just slave. Well, I guess not an allegory, but it is literally just a blatant. This is slavery in the One Piece world, and these people have always been hated by everyone. It's just racism.
Yeah. And the reason why I bring that up is I don't remember like the conversations around slavery of the fishmen. And with Arlong being like our voice, like our mouthpiece to that part of the like the setting, with some of how he is styled and some of the like environment around him, it does give off like a weird vibe. You know what I mean? Arlong has a speech that's pretty good, but but like whenever he has an interjection, it fast cuts to like a different scene of him like almost cartoonishly saying it, and it just ruins the speech. Because it's a long shot of him doing the speech dramatically, and then every time he has like an interjecting sentence, he like fucking Wile E. Coyote saying it in the other direction, and it cuts back and forth between the two, and it just looks real dumb. Yeah. And then Luffy drops a house on him.
Yeah, I felt like that shot was all right.
The house drop, like the actual like effect of it all was very good.
Yeah.
Arlong being dumb enough to help Luffy break the support pillars in an extended sequence, and not like, catch on to what was happening. He just
keeps doing it like over.
That was all right. They do a big ol' everybody's friends again. Garp runs into him.
And then this is when he's like, yeah, I was just testing you to make sure that you actually know what you want to do with your life.
And like Garp, like, it really makes Garp just pull off like 180. It undermines any of like the other points that Garp was making, and it undermines anything that he was teaching Kobe. And it really just feels awkward and bad.
Yeah.
Garp does clothesline Luffy out of the air, though. That was sick.
Yeah, I feel like that. I mean, that fight was also
that fight sucked.
It was meh. Yeah.
Luffy in shoes is cursed. Luffy wears sandals.
Yeah.
This Luffy wears boots, like little ankle booties, and it is cursed every time I see it.
It's actually really funny because I'm pretty sure Shanks was wearing the exact same shoes that Luffy was wearing, if I'm not mistaken. Because Shanks also wears sandals. But it is just really funny because, I mean, like, we had this, I don't know if we personally had this discussion before it came out, but that was a big thing. People were like, oh my God, they're not giving Luffy sandals. But, like, obviously it was just for practical reasons because if he's running around, like, he can't, like, constantly be wearing sandals. But it is cursed, don't get me wrong.
And yeah, the ending kind of honks because that's like the end of like the Garp side plot.
Yeah.
But the Garp side plot arguably shouldn't have been there.
I mean, I didn't even talk about the moment with Nami, like the help me scene. Like, I think that was nailed pretty well until the very end of the scene. Because, like, I think her acting when she's like freaking out and like stabbing the tattoo on her arm is really solid. And like Luffy showing up is good. But then when Luffy screams, it's just like,
yeah, again, it's one of those
just
things where it gets to be one pan, right? Like if you think about the manga and you think about the anime, it's a shot, it's a panel, and then hard cut.
Yeah.
We linger on it too long. There are a couple of times where Luffy's like screaming, either angry or happy, that we then just linger in the moment and like watch him post scream. And
I just like,
God, I feel so sorry for that actor because there's no way that you make the follow up after your big this is the like point of the scene scream. There's no way that you follow that up with something that doesn't just look stupid.
like I kind of just hate that he like puts his hands up in the air. Because, like, that, in and of itself, that action just kind of looks silly in live action. I kind of just wish, because I'm pretty certain in the manga he, like, just is holding his arms, like, by his sides with his fists clenched and just, like, screaming up into the air, which kind of just looks better. And I'm just like, I don't know why he didn't just do that. Like, I would have been fine with him screaming, but like him putting his hands up into the air is just kind of silly, and he does it a lot because that's just kind of a Luffy thing.
Yeah, I was about to say every other time it's definitely like just ripped from the panels.
Yeah, but in that moment, I'm just like, why didn't he just like lean back, and just like scream up into the air? No.
I think a
That's
lot
just a
of the
directing
problems of
thing.
this show, is a directing thing.
Yeah.
So the scene that I was talking about that you could honestly just watch like the show and then skip to the scene in the anime is they get back on the Mary and they're going to go to the Grand Line. Yo.
Oh yeah.
And Sanji gets the idea that they should do like a cast off ceremony, like bless the voyage type thing. And so they all take turns putting their foot on the barrel and like talking about their dreams. This is the one time that I think Nami's acting just sort of falls flat. And to her credit, I don't know how she was supposed to deliver the line, I want to make a map of the world, in how little time that she was given.
Yeah.
Like the camera's whipping around her and she has to say her line in like half a second. Yeah. It's like, but what I will say is they cut to the pictures of like to their child characters, like their child actors that we saw in all of their flashbacks, saying what their dream is in this scene.
Are you going to Usopp?
I legitimately think it makes the scene more powerful.
Yeah.
And then we get an outro of who, if you watch the show, is Smoker.
Well,
I think his cigars look real dumb because they either needed to have more or be thinner. Like, I get that he smokes his cigars all the way down, but like he could be in the middle of smoking them still. Yeah. As it stands, they just look like, gosh, you smokers got your heel, guys.
Well, I was gonna say that like I think that Usopp kind of again gets the short end of the stick because like he doesn't really get any development during his own portion. So like when it comes to the point where he's supposed to like say his dream, like it's just kind of like you haven't shown any interest in doing that thing yet. And like at least in the original he does kind of show interest in like becoming a warrior of the sea, and like that is his dream ultimately, but it's like I think his dream definitely is the shallowest of them all, especially here.
Yeah, but with the scene that we saw earlier with him kind of gushing once he found out that Luffy knows his dad, and like sort of that like hero worshiping that he's doing there, and
that's fair.
The fact that my mom's dead, so what else is there for me? I think it lands.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
This might be an editing nightmare. We might just have to
I don't think it was
restructure everything.
that
But
bad. I mean, we literally never even did the add it to the list section.
I think we kind of said at the start that we weren't going to. Right?
Yeah.
Or was that before we started rolling?
No.
Hey, Forrest.
I think we could just do that here.
Hey, Forrest.
If you've made it this far.
Shh. Hey, Forrest. Would you add it to your list?
I mean, yeah. Surprisingly, like, obviously we went through this whole episode giving all of our gripes, but I also love One Piece, and I think this is a fantastic way to just get introduced to the series. Like, you've heard all of my opinions already pretty much. So, yeah, if you haven't been hesitant to watch the anime, like, just give this a shot. And I mean, I definitely think it does it justice. What about you, Jack?
I'd also add it to the list. I think this is strictly better than watching these anime episodes. I think the characterization is as strong, if not stronger. Some of the moments just don't translate quite as well into live action, like we were talking about Zoro making his pledges, Luffy's like
Screams.
celebrations.
Yeah.
Not to the like blame of the actors, just like the way things are framed and the direct, like it doesn't hit the same. But that being said, like there are just parts that are so much better. Like we have so much more moments of like the crew talking amongst themselves about things that are not directly related to advancing the story, right? Like we have so many more moments of them just getting to know each other more. Zoro gets to be more than just a stoic, like badass line dispenser. He has opinions. He's a bit more of a smart ass. Like they're people a lot more than they are in the anime. And if you watch this and then go into that episode, like in like the episode in the anime with the barrel, if you pick up the episode after that, you will genuinely know everything that you need to know.
Yeah.
And in fact, you'll know some things that you won't even be introduced to for like another 40, 50 episodes.
Yeah.
So like,
it definitely gets all of the things that I love about One Piece. Like, I've always loved the character interactions, and I feel like this really like hits that out of the park. And yeah, it was honestly just a pleasant surprise that it wasn't awful.
the two things that were awful: lack of an intro, yayo or otherwise, and Gold Roger not saying One Piece. Those are the only two that I'm like, how dare you? How dare you?
Yeah.
So, Forrest, I don't use social media except for desperately trying to figure out how to de-link my Facebook from my Spotify. But you do.
Yeah, I make music. I go under the name Bustello, which is Bustello. You can find me on like Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. YouTube is probably the best place. You'll find all my projects through there. Thank you for listening.
Goodbye.